Welcome, everybody, to You Learn, You Turn. This week we have co-host Hamilton and we have Kim Hicks with us, who is doing great things. And we really want to highlight the fentanyl awareness that she is spreading with her nonprofit for her daughter, Kelsie's cause. We really want people to know, to get the word out, that this is fatal. And your child doesn't have to be a drug user or a partier. They could just be trying to take something one time that someone gives them, a Xanax, an Adderall, whatever it may be, and fentanyl will kill them right then and there. So this is not something for just a specific group to be afraid of. This is for every parent and every teen and every young adult to hear. So Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, Kim just told us before the podcast that would be her daughter's 25th birthday. So extra hard day for Kim, and our hearts break for you. And thank you so much for taking her death and turning it into something good and powerful for the community. We love that. So tell us about your daughter, Kim.
Well, my daughter, Kelsie, I'm going to cry already. She was just the love of my life. I was in love with her before she was born. And she and I were very, very close. We were like almost as one. I knew what she was thinking before she thought it and what she was going to do. And we were just very, very close. And she was my heart and my joy. And Kelsie was, she loved everything celestial. She was into numerology and astrology and crystals. I called her my little hippie chick, anything bohemian. She loved all that kind of stuff. She loved animals. She loved her dogs. She had 2 dogs, Gypsy and Lila. But Kelsie, unfortunately, I have an older son who's 28 who had oxygen deprivation at birth. And a result of that was he has uncontrollable rages. He has what's called IED, intermittent explosive disorder, along with a whole host of other mental health challenges. So we all and Kelsie basically live in a war zone with him because he can rage and throw things and kick holes in walls if the wind changes direction. And as Kelsie got older, the way she handled this, unfortunately, was with drugs. She turned to drugs. It started out just as marijuana because she had very severe anxiety and severe depression that we could never get control of. She had a wonderful psychiatrist. Her problems began about in the 8th grade. She was a delightful child and toddler and teenager up until the 8th grade. And when she hit 8th grade, it's like the shit just hit the fan. I'm sorry. But her depression kicked in, her anxiety kicked in. She didn't want to leave the house. She ended up just finishing high school through an online school because she was out so much with her depression at that time. She was missing so much school. We just decided to let her finish online. So she started with marijuana, and then I didn't know it until later that at some point around the age of 15 or 16, she started dabbling with pills. And then she met this guy who I call the devil, who introduced her to meth, and got her addicted to meth. And it just was downhill from there. She could not get a hold of that. She was in rehab 4 times. And each time she came home, she would only be clean and sober for a few days. She got in trouble with the law, as I think many people who get involved with drugs do. And it just wasn't her character to do all these kind of things. And she and I were very, very open about her problem, her drug use. We talked about it all the time. She hated herself. She hated using the drugs. But she said she was just so unhappy and hated herself so much. She just didn't know how else to deal with everything.
Yeah.
So, the depression, her doctor tried every type of antidepressant and we couldn't get control of her depression. And the anxiety, like I said, she had social anxiety, so she didn't want to leave the house. She stayed in her room a whole lot. But she did start using the drugs more and more. And like I said, she'd been in rehab 4 times. The last time she was in Shalom Ministries, or Shalom Recovery, which is here in Belton, South Carolina. And it was a wonderful, wonderful place for her. She stayed 3 months, and it's just for women or girls who have any type of addiction, whether it be gambling or sex or drinking or drug, whatever. But it's a wonderful Christian-based, supportive rehabilitation for girls. She stayed 3 months. We tried to get her to stay 6 months, and she just would not stay 6 months. She wanted to get home. She missed her dog. She missed her room, and we couldn't force her to stay because of her age. So
Right.
she left at 3 months. After being there 3 months, that was January the 17th of 2002. And within just a few days, she was using the meth again,
Yeah.
which I had a feeling she was going to go back to it because Kelsie had always, once she hit 8th grade and puberty, she started to gain weight, and she'd never ever had a weight problem. She was a very thin, tiny little girl, and she gained a lot of weight while at Shalom because they cook really good food there.
Mm.
Southern cooking, macaroni and cheese, potatoes, good stuff. And Kelsie liked to eat. So she was the heaviest she had ever been. And she had used meth as a weight loss drug. And so I had a strong feeling that she was not going to stay clean once she got home. And I think within 4 days, she had started using the meth again to lose weight. And so this was January the 17th of 2002 that she got out of Shalom. And on February 27th, February 26th, we were all at my home. My husband was grilling. My parents were there. Kelsie was there. And her room is just down the hall from mine, just a few feet. And I always go down to check on her. And I'm always hypervigilant, listening out for her because she also had seizures. She had a seizure disorder that she got when she fell off of an elliptical machine in my garage, and she had a bad head trauma on the cement floor. And ever since that fall, she started having seizures.
Wow.
So she had a seizure. She had seizures as well. So I was always listening out for things falling in case it was her falling in her
Right.
room, having a seizure or dropping things because of a seizure or whatever. So I had walked down to her room. It was about 5:30 to just chat with her before we ate, and everybody was already there. And I just found her sitting on her floor, cross-legged, slumped over. She was saturated in her own vomit. And I just started screaming her name, screaming, call 911. I pushed her back, and she was already blue, and stuff was coming out of her mouth. And I started CPR. My mother rushed upstairs. She had been a nurse her whole life, and she helped me with CPR until all of the first responders got there. But I knew when I saw her that this was not meth. I knew something else. She had gotten hold of something else. I just didn't know what. And I also had the passcode to her phone that she wasn't aware of, because I would sneak into her room at night and check her messages to see if she was planning to get something from somebody or if somebody was trying to sell her something. And I would delete the messages, trying to stay ahead of her, I guess.
Yeah.
So I immediately picked up her phone and started going through messages. And sure enough, there were messages where she had picked up, or somebody had come to our house actually that day. And, we later find out he supplied her with what she was told was Xanax. She thought it was Xanax. He told her it was Xanax. And it turned out that this was a pill laced with fentanyl. So fortunate for us, I had just installed surveillance cameras on the outside of the house so that when I was at work, I could see if she was coming or going anywhere or who came to the house, that kind of thing. Well, the cameras picked up the guy who sold her the Xanax, or the fake Xanax. So we had pictures of his car. We knew his name because, like I said, he came to the house and had his name. I had his phone number. I had his picture. I had everything to give the police. So luckily they picked him up within 3 days of her passing.
Was he
This
charged?
guy, yes, well, this guy has been a lifetime criminal since the age of 14. He had 30 charges against him since he was 14 years old.
Wow.
Most of them were drug related for drug trafficking, possession, manufacturing. And he was still out on the streets, which to me is disgusting. But the case is still, we still have not gone to court, but what they're going to have to charge him with is distributing counterfeit pills, because once they reached his home, they couldn't find anything in his home with fentanyl in it. And the detectives and myself also agree he'd already gotten rid of everything because he knew she had passed away and they were
Yeah.
going to come looking for him. So he's going to be charged with, like I said, distributing counterfeit pills, probably just get parole again, maybe an ankle monitor. Not sure if he's going to get any jail time. The solicitor, I met with the solicitor about a month ago, who wants me to be in court when the trial date comes up, I'm going to be able to give my victim's witness statement on Kelsey's behalf, which I had wanted to do because he even admitted that he felt quite positive that his pills are what killed her.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still up in the air as far as what's going to happen with him. I'm not
Why
quite
don't
sure
they charge him with murder?
because we don't have that law in South Carolina yet. We don't have that homicide bill yet. And actually, I went to Columbia to testify in front of the Senate subcommittee for the trafficking bill for fentanyl and for the homicide bill for fentanyl to get passed. The trafficking bill was passed so that anybody caught trafficking fentanyl or selling fentanyl can get. They have a minimum and a mandatory sentence where that wasn't in effect prior to. But the homicide bill hasn't passed yet. It's passed the Senate, but it hasn't passed the House yet.
And so do they think, so first of all, Kim, we're so sorry. And I appreciate you sharing your story. And this is something, I have 3 daughters and I tell them all, I said, if you want to smoke pot, if you want to drink, I mean, I'm in recovery, so I don't love that. But at the end of the day, if you want to do that, I'm not going to scream and yell at you. I'd rather you do it at the house. But if you ever take a pill that someone gives you that doesn't come from the pharmacy, I will kill you myself and then bring you back to life and kill you again. It's the scariest thing out there.
Well, the scary part, though, Hamilton, is they're lacing marijuana with fentanyl.
Oh, yeah.
They're putting fentanyl in every possible thing, in marijuana, in heroin, in cocaine. Now in vapes that you can buy off the street, they're putting it in vapes. They're putting it in every single type of so-called prescription pill that they can get. And they're using pill presses to make fake pills, the fake Adderall, the fake Xanax, the fake Percocet, OxyContin, all of those. 7 out of 10 pills have lethal doses of fentanyl in them now.
And I'm assuming you guys didn't have Narcan in your house because you didn't think you needed it, right?
We had Narcan. It was in her pocketbook, but she had left her pocketbook in this guy's car, and we didn't have it. And I've never gotten it back. I've never gotten her purse back. The detectives, when they went to his house, they searched for drugs. They searched for fentanyl and everything. And I told them to look for her pocketbook. They could not find her pocketbook, but they did find her driver's license and social security card, which is quite odd. So it tells me they were planning on using her identity for something else. They got rid of her pocketbook because it may have had extra of the pills in it, the fake Xanax in it, but they got rid of her purse. They tossed it somewhere.
Wow. And do they know, have they questioned him to find out if he knew there was fentanyl in there, or does he say he didn't know?
He says he didn't know that it had fentanyl in there, but he did give the police the name of the person he got them from.
Okay.
So the detectives, there's a task force, and I think it was just 2 of these detectives that worked her case. There's only 2 detectives in Greenville County that work these fentanyl cases, which is not enough.
No.
They may have added more since then, but in a year ago, it was just these 2 detectives working cases.
Wow. So tell us about the nonprofit that you've created. What are you guys doing? How can our listeners help support you guys?
Well, I just really wanted to do something to honor Kelsie and her life and honor her and to try to bring awareness of this because I knew nothing about fentanyl. And I wanted to bring awareness of this out to other parents and kids and everybody. 4 months prior to Kelsie, a good friend of ours from church, their son died the exact same way, took a half of a Xanax and died immediately. Kelsie had severe anxiety, and so did this young man. And somebody said they had a Xanax to help calm him down. He took half of it and he died immediately. But I just wanted to do something to bring awareness, to let parents know what is going on and that they have to be vigilant in talking to their kids and, telling them you cannot accept anything from anyone unless it comes from the pharmacy.
Right.
You can't even take anything, not even from your best friend, because you have no idea where your best friend has gotten it from. But I think that this is just not getting the coverage and attention it needs because I think most people have the mindset that this is a problem for people that use drugs, and it
Right.
is not. This is affecting everyone from all walks of life. Young children are being killed, babies are being killed, good kids are being killed. I read a news story not too long ago, two young girls in college, and they wanted to study for their exams and stay up and study. They were good kids. They had good grades and they didn't do drugs. And they wanted Adderall to stay up. So they got Adderall from someone, and both Adderalls were laced with fentanyl, and both these beautiful girls died.
Yeah.
It's affecting everyone from all walks of life. No one is immune to this.
Well,
You
I
have
always say, 20 something years ago, only 9,000 people died that year of a drug overdose. And
Yeah,
last year, 135,000 people died.
right,
And Narcan now is so much more widely used. If
right.
you just take the people that were saved with Narcan in the last year and add it to that number, you would have had, if we didn't have Narcan, you'd have over
Yeah,
500,000 people that
yeah,
died of drug overdose. But yet we're talking about other shit instead of that. And
yeah.
that's the criminal thing in my mind. It's so what does the nonprofit actually do? Is it educational? Are you trying to make people aware? Are you talking Narcan? Are you talking
All of
fentanyl?
that, all of that. I put out posts on all social media platforms. Any information I find about fentanyl, I put all of that information out there. Any news reports, any updates from the DEA, anything I can find about fentanyl, I'm putting out on all social media platforms. I had a fentanyl awareness event here 2 Saturdays ago, just with tents and booths set up, to hand out information. I have been appointed by Deotis as a community distributor of Narcan, so I can distribute Narcan if
great.
someone feels that they need it. And I feel everybody probably needs to keep it on hand now. With this being the way that it is, every household needs to have Narcan. So I'm just spreading awareness as well as I can, with videos and, like I said, with posts and trying to raise money, from donations, mainly donations. I've had like maybe 2 fundraisers, and then I have like T-shirts with our logo on it and things like that to try to raise money as well. And what I do with the money is, since she loved dogs so much, I just donate back to two other nonprofits. One of them is Shalom, since they were so wonderful, because they operate only on donations as well. So whatever money I get, I give out to Shalom, and I give out to a nonprofit called Labor of Love Pet Transport, and they take in dogs that have been abandoned, discarded, abused, close to death, and they nurse them back to health and then adopt them out.
Oh,
So that's what I do with any funds that I get.
That's awesome. You want to hear the craziest, cool story about Narcan and animals?
Sure.
And Liz, you may not have heard this.
no.
A dog ate his owner's Percocet,
Oh,
and went into respiratory failure, and they saved the dog with Narcan.
that's awesome. That's
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
wow.
Yeah. What do
Well,
you think about the testing kits? Have you heard about that?
at college.
Yes, and we had some testing strips as well. A lot of people have the opinion that if you get, if I'm giving my child these testing strips, that's giving them the green light to do drugs. And I don't feel that way at all. If you know your child's going to do drugs, let them at least be safe about it. Let them at least not die from it. The testing strips, I think, are fine and good if they will be used, if they're going to be used. But I don't know that a lot of people take the time to stop and think, oh, if you're one, I don't know. I've never done drugs. I've never done drugs before. So I don't know what that mindset is. So I would think that you just want to do it at that moment. I don't know that you would think to say, oh, I need to stop and test this first.
Well, listen. Go ahead,
I
Liz. No,
just
you
want to
go ahead.
say I don't think it's that mainstream, but I do think I saw something on LinkedIn the other day that a mom went to her son's parents' weekend and was in the fraternity house, and they had test strips and they had Narcan, and they said test your blow everywhere. So I think it's going to become more the norm. Unfortunately, a little too late for Kelsie,
Yeah,
but by you raising awareness for it.
yeah,
And I just want to read this one factoid from your website. And I did not know this deadly opioid that is now the leading cause of death for people 18 to 45. Wow.
right. More deaths than suicide, cancer, car accidents, heart disease, and homicide. That
And what
Well,
fentanyl
an
and
is the leading
awful
cause
way
of
to do
death.
it.
a lot of times they're labeling it as a suicide when in fact it was actually an overdose.
Well, and I don't like to use the term overdose because these are poisonings.
Right. Yeah.
O-
You're right. You're right.
overdose is when, and the media still calls it overdoses, and it's not overdose. Overdose is when you ingest too much of something that you know you're taking.
Right.
Poisoning is when you take something and are poisoned and die from something that you didn't know what you were taking.
That's
She
right.
didn't know she didn't know she was taking fentanyl. She didn't ask for fentanyl. She asked for Xanax, and
Yeah.
that's what's happening. These kids, these young people are, maybe getting a Percocet or an OxyContin or what have you, and that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for fentanyl, and they take the pill and they die. That's poisoning. That's not an overdose.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
agree. I agree with you. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I want to say something about what you said earlier about the testing strips. Most people don't know the number one predictor of a person getting into recovery is age. And if they die, then we can't get them old enough to get to
right,
the point. And
right.
so, I've said this a couple of times, and I'm sure I piss off a lot of people. I think the recovery community, and I'm a member of the recovery community, so is Liz. I think sometimes we do more harm than good because we say, to the person that's using drugs, we say, if you're not ready to stop, then once it gets bad enough, you'll raise your hand and ask for help. Instead of saying, take these testing strips, just like you said, if you're going to use drugs, test them so we can keep your ass alive.
Yeah,
And then eventually we can
right.
get you to where you need to be.
Well, because now, in the past, if you had a drug addiction, you could probably safely be a drug addict for many, many, many years and not worry about dying. That's not the case now. You're going to die sooner or later. You're not going to have the chance to grow older and decide, hey, I want to turn my life around,
Yeah.
because you're going to get hold of this stuff somewhere and you're going to die.
And Liz, you have probably thought the same thing. If fentanyl was around when you and I were not in recovery,
Wouldn't
I
be.
firmly believe I'd be dead. No
Yeah,
question
me
about it.
too. No question, because you were saying, Kim, I don't know the mindset of someone, but it typically is a random occasion. Well, if you're just dabbling, it's a random occasion. It's everybody in the room's doing it, and no, you wouldn't take a minute to test it. So
Mm-hmm.
what's the greatest message you want to get out there to parents? And we want to end with that, but also link where they can find you in this. And I think too, we want to put you with Paws for Patrick, because I think she would love their nonprofit too, because they
Okay.
give dogs to teens who are struggling with mental health issues.
Okay.
So if they're suicidal, they get a dog.
Oh,
Um,
great.
Yeah, so that's another nonprofit that we just found. But what's your biggest message, Kim? I mean, what do you want people to know about fentanyl and your wonderful daughter?
Well, just to know that about my daughter, that she was a beautiful soul. She was a beautiful child, a beautiful young lady. She had the kindest heart, and her life was taken from her. It was taken before she had the opportunity to grow up, to see what the world is really like. And I'm here gonna have to live the rest of my life without her. I don't have a bride to look forward to. I don't have a child to look forward to graduating from college, or anyone to be with me when I get old to take care of me. She was a beautiful light. She had the biggest smile you've ever seen in your life, the most beautiful big eyes, and she was charismatic and silly and goofy and funny and full of knowledge and potential. And she just happened to get, sucked into drugs, one, and then made this terrible, terrible mistake by getting these fake pills from this guy. And it was a fatal mistake that she did. And it's something that I just try to have to live the best that I can the rest of my life, and it's just not easy whatsoever. It's the hardest thing in the world.
Your speaking out will save lives.
Well,
So
I hope
thank you.
so. And the
Thank you.
biggest point I want to get out is that parents don't think that this is not going to happen to me. I spoke to a dad at the event last Saturday, and he said, my kids, my boys are followers, not leaders. They're straight A students, and we have a very strict household, which is all wonderful, but it can happen to anybody.
Oh yeah.
His
Sometimes
kid,
it makes sense.
no kid is too perfect or too wonderful or too smart to get sucked into somehow possibly getting hold of this stuff. Kids are very impressionable, and they're very easy to persuade, especially if their friends are with them or their best friend says, here, I have something that'll help you. Parents have got to talk to their kids about it. And I think parents might be afraid to talk about the subject. I don't know. But you've got to talk about it with your kids, not once, not twice, but every day,
Over
weekly,
and over.
and
Hey,
hound
Kim,
it into them.
Tim, I want to say one thing. And I think this is a really important message to get out to people. We do a lot of work with people that may be suicidal, and the question always comes up is, should I bring it up? Should I ask them if they're okay? And the reason people ask that question is because they're scared that if you bring up suicide to someone that's suicidal, that may push them to
Right.
actually to go through with the act.
Mhm.
That is absolutely 100% false. That has been
Right.
studied, that has been tested. You asking somebody if they're okay or asking them if they're suicidal is not going to push them to do suicide.
Mhm.
And I want to make the exact same comment when it comes to fentanyl. I think a lot of parents think, I don't want to have this conversation with my kid because that's going to give them the idea and they're going to go out and do that.
Right.
Like, that's bullshit. Like,
Mhm.
you want, if you don't want to be sitting where Kim is one day and dealing with this, you need to have your conversation with your kids.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
And do not be scared that your perfect child, because I have this conversation, is going to run out and start snorting coke. That's not
Right.
how this shit works.
No.
So I just want to make that very clear to people.
Yeah. And I think now, if you're a parent and you're not talking to your child about this, you're negligent. I mean, you're being a negligent parent for not, because, and I've talked to a lot of youth and they didn't know anything about fentanyl.
Yeah.
So it needs to be talked about, and it needs to come from the parents, and the parents they need to scare your kids. That's fine. Don't accept anything from anyone unless it's from me, mom, or dad, and the pharmacy, because chances are anything you get from anyone or off the street is going to be laced with fentanyl, and it'll
Yeah.
be your last time.
So, Liz, I want to bring up one other interesting point because I want people to really think about this. I do a lot of work with corrections and law enforcement because of what I do at U-Turn and what I've done in my past. And I was always wondering, why is the cartel, the people that are making these fentanyl pills, why are they doing it?
Mhm.
They're killing their own patients or their own buyers? Like, why would they be doing that? Do you guys know the answer? Because I do know the answer now.
I do. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Well, they're driving addiction is what they're
that's
doing. The
exactly right.
cartels are driving addiction. They're getting the precursors for fentanyl are being made in China, being sent over to Mexico, being made in clandestine labs, and brought over our unsecured border. And I think last year it said over 60 million pills were confiscated by the DEA. That's just how many were confiscated. I
So
can't imagine.
that means there's a billion that made it
That
over.
means there's a billion more that came through and got to our kids and got
Right.
to our loved ones. But they're not trying to kill people. They're trying to drive addiction because you only need just a minute amount of fentanyl to make you addicted.
That's
And
exactly right.
so they
Yeah.
keep going back. But when they're mixing these pills with fentanyl, they have they're not regulating it whatsoever. So one pill might have a fatal dose. Another pill might have just enough to get you addicted. So you're liking it and you go back to buy it. Well, the next batch you get might be the fatal batch.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what I wanted people to know is if you're struggling with why are they killing people, they're not trying to. Fentanyl will get you hooked much quicker. So if you take heroin once and it's pure heroin, you may do it again, you may not do it again. If you take heroin that has a little bit of fentanyl in it, you are hooked and now they've got a client for life.
That's
And
right.
they
why
don't
it's
care
happening.
if you die. They don't care if they put too
No,
much
because
of
they've got a whole line of people back there waiting to get more. So they don't care if they kill 1 or 10 people.
That's
They've
right.
still got a whole bunch of people lined up to get, this stuff they like.
God,
Exactly.
it's scary, but with people like you out there, Kim, we're going to get the word out. I wish you would be in every school, church, everywhere youth are gathered, because we always hear people who say, oh yeah, I used to drink a lot and I came through that, and that's impressive. But to have a mom say, I had a kid just like you sitting in that chair, and one night she wanted to take the edge off and she's gone. I mean,
Well, I'm happy to speak. So if anybody's listening to this or wants me to come speak, just contact me.
all right,
Love
we'll
it.
put all your stuff in the show notes. And I just want to say thank you on Kelsey's birthday.
Thank you.
Coming on here and talking about this. I know how hard, I can't imagine. I don't know how hard it is. But thank you for doing this to save lives, because you will inevitably save lives.
Well, I hope so, because I hate the thought of any other parent having to live the way that I have to live now. You don't want to do that. So, I just don't. I don't want other people to have to live with this type of pain because it doesn't go away.
Kim,
Well, hang in there, Kim. You're the best. And as Liz said, congratulations on turning something horrible into saving other people. And we support everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you. Oh, and I did write a book. I wrote a book taking lots of pages from Kelsey's journals, because she would write and doodle a lot. So I've got pages from her journals from different rehabs, and also it has information on fentanyl and resources and addiction and depression. It's got all that information mixed in with it as well. And it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's called Hear Me Speak, Thoughts from an Angel. And I just thought it would be useful for maybe other people that are struggling with addiction, or parents, to see the inner thoughts of somebody that was going through the same thing.
I'll get it today. I would love to read that. And I'll also link that in the show notes.
Okay, awesome. Great.
You're busy in your grief. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on.
Thank you, Liz.
And you guys that are listening out there, this can happen to your kid. This can happen to you. This is not discriminatory. It does not pick people from certain races or colors or demographics. It's killing our kids. It's the number one killer, age 18 to 45. Let that sink in.
Yep.
We need to get educated, protect our kids. And Kim, just thank you so much. And I'll see everybody next week for another episode of You Learn, You